Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Now, after Nepal burned for 2 consecutive days, curfew has been imposed from 5 p.m. until 6 a.m. Thursday. The Gen Z protest that followed after the ban of 26 social media platforms forced KP Sharma Oli to put down his resignation. Meanwhile, former Chief Justice Sushila Karki is the front runner for now, and Balendra Shah and Ravi Limachane are also being seen as other probable candidates. Conversations are on, talks are on with the Gen Z youth following the imposition of the curfew. The Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu now remains closed until further notice, but meanwhile, Air India is operating special flights today and tomorrow from Delhi to Kathmandu and back to help passengers who have been stranded due to the recent developments in Nepal. The scheduled operations will also resume from tomorrow. Nepal's army chief has also met youth leaders and is holding discussions with major stakeholders. A coordination committee from Gen Z is to be formed. The coordination committee will be authorized to hold further talks on the formation of the interim government in Nepal. Lawmakers from Nepal's Nagrik Unmukti party have collectively resigned. The MPs have submitted their resignations while demanding dissolution of parliament. And joining us from Kathmandu is our reporter Amit Bharadwaj. He's been reporting relentlessly through the violence that we've seen over there. What is the situation on the ground, Amit? We're looking at talks between the youth and the army, and there are certain names that have come up.
The worst is certainly over in Nepal, and if you would have asked me this question last evening, my answer would have been certainly, we do not know which way Nepal is going. But I've seen this capital city of Kathmandu change over, in the span of 12 hours. When I say 12 hours, when we reached the safe location last night, after all our reportage, everything looked vulnerable. But that's when army chipped in on the streets and every lane of Kathmandu. And those who were using violent methods to protest were actually, given a straight message by the army, Nepalese army, that violence and damage to the government property or private property will not be tolerated. No arson will be tolerated. In the morning when we were on the ground, whether it be the parliament building, the Prime Minister's office, Supreme Court, everywhere the army was marching with its armored vehicles. So that was a clear message which has settled the debate about normalcy, law and order situation, because in fact there's a Delhi Bazaar jail in the heart of Kathmandu town, and the prisoners attempted a jailbreak there, but within a few minutes you had the army rushing in with their armored vehicles, using force with restraint although to manage things there. So that's how things are unfolding right now. And I've just come from the place where the Gen Z protesters or activists, if we can call them now, because I've seen them clearing the streets all through the day today in Kathmandu city, taking everything that was devastated out of the street so that traffic movement can be restored in the city.
Right, Amit, it seems like for now peace prevails, but uncertainty continues. For now, what we're also looking at, Amit, is that Karki seems to be the consensus candidate. What is the road ahead? Is she going to be leading the interim administration?
Well, certainly, Sushila Karki seems to be the top favorite as far as the next head of the interim government is concerned. But is her name final? I think there's some time, maybe in the next 24 hours or 48 hours, we'll get a clear picture as to whether she is taking over the government of Nepal, the interim government of Nepal, and which will also decide the future course of action and the future of Nepal and its Gen Z community, which actually ousted the political elite. I'm not even saying that the political party is in power, rather the political elite, and this entire transition and revolution in Nepal was brought by them in merely 17 and 18 hours of non-stop agitation on the roads after the killings of 9th September. Now, coming back to the Sushila Karki matter, what we are given to understand that when I went to the army headquarters in Bhadrakali of the Kathmandu area, Bhadrakali area of the Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal, what I saw was the Gen Z crowd, the protesters and the activists who have now taken a form of activist, so to say, because they have been clearing the streets all through the day today after the violence that happened yesterday.
Right. Another news that has been trickling in is we've been talking to Indians who are stuck there. Amit, how many Indians approximately are stuck in Nepal, and what is the embassy really doing in ensuring that they return home?
Well, you know, Indians from different background and different states of the country are stranded in Nepal at this point in time. They are constantly in touch with the Nepal authorities as well as the Indian embassy located out here in Kathmandu. You know, the Andhra Pradesh government, for that matter, has gotten into touch with the different group of Telugu people who are certainly stranded in different parts of Nepal, including Kathmandu. And with the consultation of the authorities, you know, they have been put at safer places, safer hotels, which were identified in coordination with the local authorities out here. The Nepal army has already issued an advisory in this particular regard. If any tourists, be it Indian tourists or anyone else, the foreign nationals who are right now inside Nepal, if they are facing any problem, they have to immediately get into touch with the agencies, the police authority or the army around them, so that proper redressal can be given to them.
Right. Right. Amit, that is a very critical area that we're looking at. We know that the Indian embassy in Beijing has also put out a travel advisory and spoken of how the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, of which Nepal leg is an important part, that travelers should now look at and ensure that they don't travel to Nepal further to be traveling to Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, and that the Yatra will certainly see some obstacles now because of the situation in Nepal. So that's one part. And there are many who are in Pashupatinath as well, traveling there. So we have a lot of travelers who've come in, who went to Nepal and ensured that, you know, they are there not just for tourism, but for pilgrimage purposes as well. But right now, they're stranded there. The embassy, like Amit said, is looking at ensuring that they're safe, that they're in safe places. They need to get in touch with the embassy and have themselves registered. And the Air India is resuming flights to ensure that Indians come home safely. Now, Donald Trump calls Modi a very good friend, but at the same time, he's urging EU, that's the European Union, to hit India with 100% tariffs over Russian oil. And while he pressures others, America's own defense industry is cashing in billions from the Ukraine war. So the question is Trump really standing up for principles or just protecting America's profits? Here's a report.
US President Donald Trump is once again sending mixed signals, this time over India, China and the Ukraine war. On one hand, Trump calls Prime Minister Narendra Modi his very good friend, praising the India-US partnership and expressing confidence in resolving trade disputes. Modi too echoed optimism, saying talks would unlock the limitless potential of bilateral ties. But on the other hand, Trump is pushing the European Union to join the United States in slapping tariffs of up to 100% on India and China, two of the biggest importers of Russian crude oil. His argument: choke off Moscow's oil revenue and force Vladimir Putin to the table. This comes even as Washington itself profits the most from the conflict. According to the Observer Research Foundation, global defense spending soared to $2.7 trillion in 2024, the sharpest annual rise since the Cold War. And America's defense industry has been the biggest winner. Between 2020 and 2024, the US supplied 45% of Ukraine's arms imports, while its own arms exports jumped by more than 20% globally. Lockheed Martin, Boeing and other US giants are ranking in billions as NATO allies scramble to replenish stockpiles and fund new packages for Kiev. In fact, from 2024 onwards, Washington shifted from aid to sales, turning the war into a business model. So while Trump threatens punitive tariffs on India for buying discounted Russian oil, the reality is that America itself is cashing in on the war more than anyone else. A smiling Trump may say Modi is a great friend, but his double standards reveal a different truth. When it comes to Ukraine, war has become business, and the biggest profits are flowing straight into America's defense industrial complex. Vishalik Shaha, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
And joining me now is Sherry Malhotra, Deputy Director, Strategic Studies Program at the ORF. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us. Look at the larger perspective over here. China not being tariffed like India is. What is the play over here, and what's the play when it comes to pressuring Europe to impose 100% tariffs on both India and China?
Well, thank you for having me on the program, Geeta. So firstly, I would say that, President Trump is himself feeling the pressure. It's because he's been unable to persuade Russia and Ukraine to arrive at a peace deal. There was hardly any outcome from that much anticipated Alaska summit. So I guess he's realizing the hard way that diplomacy doesn't happen overnight. And he's seeking to try fresh tactics, such as demanding that the EU now hit India with tariffs of 100% to pressurize Putin to end the war. But he's also simultaneously been posting on his Truth Social platform about continuing trade negotiations with India. So it's really a bit schizophrenic that he's on the one hand pressurizing India's partners to impose further tariffs on India while talking about successful trade negotiations with India. But coming to your question about the EU, I think it's unlikely that the EU would cave into such demands. For starters, the EU has itself time and again been at the receiving end of Trump's threats. The transatlantic alliance has gone through multiple upheavals since Trump took over in January this year. So the Europeans know how he works and how he corners countries into accepting certain positions. I think the Europeans are also likely aware that these demands originate from Trump's personal frustrations due to his lack of success in brokering the peace deal, given that his eyes are on that Nobel Peace Prize. Secondly, I would say that when you talk about the EU-India partnership, this week itself, we will actually see a lot of activity on this front.
That's right.
So the EU's top trade negotiators, the EU Commissioner for Trade, he will soon be in Delhi to advance the FTA negotiations. The PSC, the Political and Security Committee, which comprises of the 27 ambassadors of the EU member states to Brussels, are also visiting India. You also have the EU-India counterterrorism dialogue just taking place in Brussels as we speak.
Right.
And next month, the Committee of the European Parliament on Trade will be in India. There's also going to be a new EU-India strategic agenda to be launched next year, along with an EU-India summit. So really my point is that this is the extent of the diplomatic and political engagement taking place currently between the EU and India. And this really goes to show how serious both are about deepening relations with each other. So I think there's less likelihood that the EU would, jeopardize a partnership that it is investing a lot in, one that is growing in such a steady manner, only to appease Trump.
Right.
At the time when the EU Trade Commissioner is coming to India in 2 days with the goal of progressing on the FTA negotiations.
Right. Also, Sherry, the fact that there's a distinction European Union makes when it comes to illegality and immorality. Over here, this is not illegal. They might consider it immoral to buy Russian oil. Sherry Malhotra, thank you so much for joining us for now.
Thank you.
Now, Trump's doublespeak can hardly be missed. But why this selective outrage against India alone? On Statecraft today, I explain why this blow hot, blow cold attitude and how does China stack up against the US. You can watch the detailed analysis on India Today Global's YouTube channel. Do subscribe to the channel as well if you want the latest developments from across the world. For now, here's the excerpt. Donald Trump likes to call himself a master deal maker, but his treatment of India looks more like a master class in doublespeak. one moment he's hot.
One of America's greatest, most devoted, and most loyal friends, Prime Minister Modi of India. Thank you.
And the next moment, he's cold.
I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil, as you know, from Russia.
All while dangling the promise of a beautiful deal with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. His advisors blast India for buying discounted Russian oil.
Because India's high tariffs cost us jobs and factories and income and higher wages. And then the taxpayers lose because we got to fund Modi's war.
But Washington's own China policy quietly spares Beijing from equivalent punishment, even though it is the biggest importer of that very same oil. Trump brands India Maharaja of tariffs, accuses it of laundering blood money, yet floats tweets about positive talks. Why is China allowed to skate while India gets hammered? Has India really become that dispensable to the United States of America? And how does China stack up against America? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. Summer of 2025 exposed the pattern. Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on Indian textiles, jewelry, footwear, and chemicals under the banner of squeezing Putin, while Navarro called India a Kremlin laundromat and warned of consequences if New Delhi didn't come around. But at the very same time, the administration eased restrictions on US semiconductor sales to China, delayed new penalties on Beijing's Russian oil trade, and spoke of productive talks with Xi Jinping. The world's two biggest importers of Russian crude were treated like opposites. Is this principle, or is it pure political calculation dressed up as foreign policy? US President Donald Trump has dramatically escalated his trade as sanctions playbook, urging the European Union to hit imports from India and China with tariffs of up to 100% in an effort to choke off Russia's war chest. But Europe has pushed back, because buying Russian oil, according to European Union, is not illegal, it may be immoral, and therefore they cannot sanction countries that buy oil from Russia. Meanwhile, businesses live in uncertainty while politicians trade barbs and tweets. Contrast that with Washington's approach to China. Beijing buys even more Russian oil than India and remains the world's largest exporter, a critical supplier of advanced electronics, semiconductors, rare earths, batteries, and affordable consumer goods. So why has India become the easier target? Scale and integration matter. India's exports were about $825 billion in 2024-25. Impressive, yet smaller than China's trillion-dollar level trade. And its integration into global supply chains is still developing. India does not yet dominate the high-tech intermediate inputs or critical manufacturing that make a partner indispensable for immediate supply resilience. The US need for China is not only about parts and products, but about demand and finance. China is a major market for US agricultural goods and aircraft, and it remains a large holder of US treasuries that helps keep borrowing costs lower. That asymmetry explains why Trump's doublespeak lands on India with greater force. India is still pegged as a rising option rather than an immediate substitute. Its export basket skews toward textiles, pharmaceuticals, and services rather than the full spectrum of critical intermediate goods. But India is growing, and that growth will change the calculus. Treating India as dispensable might win short-term headlines, but it risks handing strategic advantage to rivals and eroding the very partnerships Washington claims to value. The question for both capitals is whether they learn before the costs deepen and whether India accepts being a beatable target or insists on being treated like the strategic partner it is becoming. Thank you for watching Statecraft. That's all in this edition of the show, but before we leave you, we go with these visuals. The US president claims that Washington, D.C. is safe as crackdown on immigration continues and the National Guards have been deployed in D.C. He also said that earlier it was unsafe to visit D.C. restaurants at night because of high crime rate. But when President Trump went for dining at a seafood restaurant near the White House, this was the scene at the restaurant. Protesters were chanting, "Free D.C., free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time." Take a look. Goodbye and take care.
Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! Free Palestine! Trump is the Hitler of our time! He's terrorizing communities all over the world! From Puerto Rico!